Seamus, there's a very famous woman from Bunclody.
Yeah, she's the woman we call Eileen A'Roon, I suppose, from the song Eileen A'Roon. She was Eleanor by right, not Eileen, but Eleanor Caivánach, one of the cabinets of Clonmullen. Now, her grandfather was the great man in the Elizabethan Wars, known as Donal Spáineach. And Donal Spáineach he had his family, of course. A son of Donal Spáineach was a colonel in James's army, I think, against before Cromwell's time, that time. And his daughter was Eleanor. And there's historical knowledge about her, but there's also folklore about her. The folklore says that she was in love with a Carúil Óg O'Dawley, a professional poet from the north of the county. And the story goes that she eloped with him. Apparently the story goes that he certainly was, it's true that he was very friendly or very great with her, because he wrote poems to her which are extant in that manuscript from the 17th century. And the story goes that he was out of the country or out of the area for a long time anyway, and in the meantime that her family had arranged a marriage for her. And there was festivities on the evening before the marriage up in Clonmullen Castle, and who arrives there? Only Carúil. They say he was disguised as a harper, but anyway, the disguise didn't fool Eleanor. She recognised him, and he supposed to have eloped. And that's where the history or the folklore comes in. We don't know what happened to her after that. We don't know where she went or where she died or whether did elope or not. But definitely he had written poems to her. And
Clonmullen, Seamus, Clonmullen Castle it's Carlow, isn't it?
It's on the Carlow side of the River Clody. And John O'Donovan, writing in the Ordnance Survey letters in 1840, says the plough now travels over its site. It was completely gone. And they moved then to Carryduff Castle, which you can't see now with ivy. If you go down to the castle now, it's just, you think it's a big tree. It's completely let go. When John Spillane was here, is his name? I thought I'd bring him up to see it when we talked about the song Eileen A'Roon, and bring him up to show and I went up beforehand myself just to check, and I couldn't see it. I mean, I saw where it was, but it's all just big clump of ivy like that all over it, which is an awful pity. I'll show you a picture of it now. There's a picture of it in the book there.
And Seamus,
they moved to there anyway.
In Carryduff Castle, that's called.
Yeah.
And wasn't there a little bit of a story, whether it was truth in it now, as a child, that there was a story, wasn't there, that there was a sill or a piece from Clonmullen Castle here in Bunclody?
Oh, the stone over a doorway in Church Road or Church Street, that has been put forward as a theory anyway. I don't think, it doesn't look like a stone. It's the lintel over the door, or sort of an arch over the door. It doesn't, to me, I'm not an expert on architecture or anything, but it doesn't look to me to be out of an old castle. More like a later building. It must have been out of a big house, all right. But that was Clonmullen. But as I said, the family moved to Carryduff Castle, and there's a famous story, of course, written about James Annesley, and the Annesley, the big trial now in the 1700s. They lived for a while there, he went to school in Bunclody, this James Ansley. And
This is the James Ansley that the book was written about.
the book was written about, and yeah, he was the son of, what was his, oh gosh.
Was it Arthur Ansley? No.
Hmm?
Was it Arthur Ansley? No.
One of them.
Yeah.
I can't remember the husband's name, but it was when his father died, his uncle claimed the title and possessions, claiming that James was not a legitimate son, a legitimate heir, and there was a trial held, and they had him kidnapped and brought up and sold as a slave in the West Indies and all the rest of it. But when he was a boy, he was living in Bunclody here, where he was known as Ontierna Og. That was brought up in evidence in the court. He was known in Irish, like Bunclody was Irish speaking at that stage, and he was known by the people as Ontierna Og. So it's a nice connection, although sometimes it's not mentioned in the stories that you hear about him, or that he was living here actually as a chap. Little boy went to school too, and the schoolmaster's name is mentioned and everything in the trial now. This is in the trial.
And Ansley he owned a lot of land around Cole and Ballygarrett, Castle Ansley.
There was a time when that family, they owned so much all over Ireland, I read this somewhere, that his possessions were coloured differently from the rest of the country. He owned it everywhere, thousands of acres everywhere, all over the country. Comolan was the last bit of it to be sold or done away with. Yeah.
But
we've gone away from Eileen.
But that's okay. But Eileen A'Roon, Carroll O'Dowlig, his family came from up near Palace, you were saying?
Palace is the name of the town land. It's up Ballyfad direction there. Coolgraney up that side, in Wexford though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who were they? They were a family of learned poets.
They were professional poets. The O'Dowlig and the MacCuchy were. There's a big book called On Leabhar Bronnach, the Book of the O'Byrnes, as it's called in English, because all the big families that time prided themselves on having a dúnadh or a poem book about their family, and they would employ a professional poet to record in verse or in poetry the big events in their lives, and maybe a birth or a death or a victory in a battle or something like that. And in Leabhar Bronnach there's some, not from the O'Dowlig I think, but the MacCuchy. One of them is a famous Irish poem, Muscal the Vishnach of Annaba. Ireland, waking up your courage, is a sort of an incentive to
rise up again.
Rise up again or something like that. Anyway.
And would they the same O'Byrnes would have been a Fiach McHugh?
Yeah, that family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're it is Fiach McHugh's family and his predecessors and his successors.
Mm-hmm.
And a man called Sean MacArt from the north of Ireland, or from up Monaghan, I think he was. At least I know relatives who he edited it. He died as a young man, I believe. He was a good Irish scholar, and he edited these poems. The poems are all written to the various members of the O'Briens and
the O'Dowligs were the poets.
O'Dowligs were another profession. The two families, the MacCuchy and the O'Dowlig, were two families of professional poets living up in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah, what have we done?
So Carroll fell in love with Eleanor.
Yeah, and that is I'd say 100% true, because he wrote poems to her, and there's at least 3 poems in Irish extant in manuscripts today, and they're addressed to Eleanor Iníon Sir Murach, and sometimes he's known as on Ridhera. Ridhera is the Irish word for a night, a K and IGHT now. They on Rither O'Murchu. And anyway, there's a poem in it, a lovely little poem, and there's a sort of little riddle in it about, he's writing about this, a little love poem, and he says, he gives a riddle as to her name, and the first one is, I'm saying it in English, in Irish, but in English, the device for catching fish, which would be a net, a tall letter would be L, and a precious metal would be gold. So he has it, the tall letter, the device for catching fish, lean, L, lean, and then the precious metal, ore, L, lean, ore, is in the poem. You know, it's a clever little, and that's a verse, like it's in a verse. So,
and that was written, could have been written.
Well, no, the manuscript was written, one of the manuscripts was written in the 1670s. So, I mean, the Eleanor up in Kilmichael, she died in 1717. That's a different Eleanor. And it's Eleanor too, it's not Eileen, you know, Eleanor, in English even.
Because in Kilmichael we're told that Eleanor's grave is in Kilmichael, but you're saying the family are definitely buried there.
That was the burial place of Eileen A'Roon's grandfather. So she probably there. If she died in this locality, that's where she's buried. But the person named on the stone is her niece. Cahir. Cahir. It's anglicised Cahir nowadays, but he's anglicised with the English part as Charles. So there's no connection whatsoever between Cahir and Charles, but he's down in the books as Charles.
And who was he, Seamus? Who was
a son of Donald Spawnox, I think, or son or grandson, I can't remember now.
And Eleanor was the daughter.
Eleanor's daughter of his. No, this Eleanor of Eileen A'Roon was a sister of. So it must have been a son. Cahir is a grandson of Donald Spawnox, and she was his sister. And that means she's Eileen A'Roon's niece. I think I'll have to get a blackboard now.
Family tree.
Family
tree. And the grave up here in Kilmichael says that Eleanor
Booth. And we find a William Booth, who was a lieutenant in her father's regiment, and is down as Clonegall. A William Booth of Clonegall. So it's very likely that he's the man that she has his name, Booth. So I don't think there'd be any doubt about it that this Eleanor the Second, we'll call her, married this William Booth, and that's why she's down as Eleanor Booth, otherwise Kavanagh on the stone.
And Booth was in the King James, was James?
Yeah, he's in. Wait, now what period are we talking about now? See, I'm forgetting. I'm getting mixed up now with James and William and James, and then and Oliver Cromwell. Then after that, because it was after the Battle of the Boyne. Anyway, there was William and James, because that's why when the Caverners had to leave here, they were charged with being outlawed for treason, and this Cahir is down on one document as from Carrickduff, and the other, there were two charges: treason committed against their Majesties in Ireland and abroad. So separate things. If you're plotting in France or Spain or something, that was treason. You just committed abroad. But he's down in one as from Carrickduff, and the other as from in the printed version is Bumclody, Bumclody. It was obvious of Bunclody. That's the first. That's the earliest reference that I came across to actually Bunclody as not as a place, but as a town or as an address. You know, that it was beginning to come into prominence anyway. Apparently, then that carried up, and it was.
So that's the 1600s then.
Yeah, 1690. After
Yeah.
It's near enough 1700, but yeah.
And what happened to Cavanists that
They went to France.
they went to France?
And one thing that they brought with them, the most precious thing in the world to me, they brought with them to France the gold crown of the kings of Leinster. And that's in a book by, whatever his name is, Irishmen in the Service of France or something like that. They brought it with, and it was in a museum of some sort in Toulouse or somewhere like that, in the time of the French Revolution, and it was looted, probably melted down. But I mean, such a treasure, the gold crown of the kings of Leinster, which to me is part of the proof that it's the Clonmullins were the direct descendants, not the Burrs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of names survived over there.